Hey guys! So today I'm going to be talking to y'all about creating major scales. The major scale is one of the most essential scales to learn in music theory because many other scales are built upon it. The style of my video today is going to be a little bit different where I'm going to insert my own drawings and work that I've done and talk through the things I'm showing you. You guys won't actually be seeing my face, but I'll be here to explain everything that you'll see. So enjoy. Okay, so first things first. What is a scale? A scale is an organized set of musical pitches or notes which follows a specific sequence of intervals. Different sequences or patterns of intervals will make different types of scales. A major scale is a set of 7 notes which follows the interval pattern whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. It's made of 7 notes which ends on an 8th note that is equivalent to the first note, also known as the tonic note, but just in the next octave up. For a technical explanation, the 8th note will duplicate the first note, just doubling in frequency, which means sounding higher by an octave. There are also some important guidelines to follow when creating major scales. 1. Major scales cannot repeat letter names. 2. Letter names must be in order. And 3, sharp and flat accidentals cannot mix in a single scale. For example, a C major scale is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Letter names cannot repeat. This is an example of the scale written incorrectly. It would still sound the same, but be written wrong. Similar to the English language of how the same sounding words can have different meanings depending on their spelling, like meat and meat. The same sounding word changes definition based on the way it's spelled. Context will decipher the way a note is notated, written in a scale. In this case, F and E sharp would still sound the same, no matter what we choose to call the note. We have the same sounding note in both scales, but just notated differently. F and E sharp are enharmonic equivalents. In the context of a C major scale, we must call this note an F and not an E sharp. If we were to call this note an E sharp, we would be breaking a rule when writing major scales. Letter names cannot repeat. If we were to leave it as an E sharp, the letter name E would repeat in this scale. In addition to not repeating letter names, major scales cannot have the letter names out of order as such. C, E, D, F, G, B, A, C. Changing the order of notes will also change the interval pattern, no longer making the scale major. Again, the pattern of intervals that exists between the notes of a major scale are whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Between the first and second notes of the scale, or between the first and second scale degree, there is a musical distance of a whole step, or a whole tone. Between the second and third scale degree, there is also a whole tone. A scale degree is the technical term that refers to the position of a particular note on a scale that is relative to the starting note, or the tonic note. Between the third and fourth scale degree, there is a half step, or a semitone, which, as the name implies, is half the distance of a whole step, or a whole tone. Between the fourth and fifth degree of the scale is a whole step, and so on and so forth until we finish the sequence of intervals. At that point, we will have created a full major scale. C would be the tonic note, the starting note, or the first scale degree. D would be the second scale degree. E, the third scale degree. F, the fourth scale degree, G, the fifth, A, the sixth, B, the seventh, and C, the eighth. If we had the letter names of the scale out of order as such, C, E, D, F, G, B, A, C, not only would the intervals be wrong, but the notes would also be heard out of order. If we look at the incorrect way of writing a C major scale, the distance between C and E would not be a whole step. The distance between the first and second note needs to be a whole step because that is the first interval of the sequence used to create a major scale. The distance between C and E in this incorrect order is not a whole step, which automatically means this scale cannot be major. Distances between notes are what define the type of scale the notes create. Our ears can hear these intervals, so playing notes out of order will change what the scale is and the way a scale sounds altogether. Let's do a quick recap of the distances that make up a whole step and a half step. To move a whole step away from any note, you must travel 2 half steps. A half step is the distance that exists between every adjacent note. Each arrow in the drawing above indicates the distance of a half step. In both pictures, we start on C. There is a half step between C and the black key, C sharp or D flat. There is also a half step between C sharp or D flat and D. To move a whole step away from C, you must travel 2 half steps, passing the black key, C sharp, D flat, making C and D a whole step away from each other. Whole step and half step intervals are what make up the pattern of intervals used to create major scales. Now that we've got the basic gist of what a major scale is and the pattern of intervals necessary to create one, let's dissect a C major scale. I've already shown you how to write a major scale, and now we're going to dive deeper into looking at how the pattern of intervals for a major scale applies to C major. We'll be identifying the pattern of intervals between each of the notes on a keyboard. C major is the only major scale that has no sharps or flats and is entirely made up of white piano keys. This makes it the easiest scale to memorize, read, and understand. All we have to do is start with any C on the piano and play every white note until we reach the next C in the next octave up. It is for this reason that C major is almost always the first major scale that is taught to music students. This layout of the piano is actually based upon the C major scale. Right now, we're going to prove that this is, in fact, a C major scale by identifying the pattern of intervals in between all the notes. Afterwards, we're going to build a new major scale with a completely different tonic note, but still following the same pattern of intervals. This is the C major scale on a keyboard. Each individual arrow indicates the distance of 1 half step or semitone. Let's begin with the first interval. Between C and D, there is a whole step. We skipped over the black key, C sharp or D flat, to land on D. We traveled 2 half steps from C to D in order to create a whole step interval. Between D and E is a whole step. There is 1 half step between D and the black key, D sharp or E flat, and another half step between the black key and E. We skipped over D sharp or E flat to land on E. Between E and F on the keyboard is a special place where there is no black key that separates these 2 white keys. The next interval we must travel to get to our next note, or the 4th scale degree, is a half step. This means that we don't skip over any note. We don't skip over any black keys like we just previously did. We land on the note directly next to E, a white piano key, which is F. If we were to travel a whole step away from E, we would land on the black key, F sharp or G flat. This would be incorrect since we need a half step between the 3rd and 4th note, not a whole. So far, we've traveled 3 out of the 7 intervals of the pattern of intervals for a major scale. We have 3 more whole step intervals and a half step interval in our pattern left to complete the C major scale. Between F and G is a whole step. We skipped over the black key, F sharp or G flat. Between G and A is a whole step. We skipped over the black key, G sharp or A flat. Between A and B is a whole step. We skipped over the black key, A sharp or B flat. And now, to finish our C major scale with the last interval of the pattern, we travel a half step from B. This is the exact same kind of distance as between E and F. No black key separates these 2 white keys. So from B, we land on the piano key directly next to it, a white piano key, which is C, and we're back on our tonic note. There we have it, our C major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. No repeating letter names or accidentals, and all the letter names are in the correct alphabetical order. We've shown the pattern of intervals that exist between each of the notes. Awesome! So now that we've dissected the C major scale, let's create a G major scale. G will be our tonic note. Because C major is the only scale with no accidentals or black keys, we can anticipate an accidental being discovered among one of the notes in the G major scale. This is also a way of saying that we can anticipate landing on a black piano key somewhere. We'll begin with plugging in the letter names first, since we know that they have to be in order. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Our job now is to follow the interval pattern and see when and where we land on a black piano key. We will then apply the appropriate accidental to the correct scale degrees. We don't know as of right now whether we will use sharp or flat accidentals yet, but we will find out once we start traveling from letter name to letter name. The first interval in the major scale pattern is a whole step. Between G and A, this is true, so there is nothing we need to do to modify A to change the distance between the two notes. So we know the second scale degree for a G major scale is A. We have another whole step interval. Between A and B, this is true, so there is nothing we need to do to modify B to change the distance. The third scale degree for a G major scale is B. The next interval is a half step between the third and fourth scale degree. Between B and C, this is also true, so there is nothing we need to do to modify C to change the distance. The fourth scale degree for a G major scale is C. The next interval is a whole step. Between C and D, this is true, so there is nothing we need to do to D to change the distance. The fifth scale degree of a G major scale is D. The next interval is a whole step. Between D and E, this is true, so there is nothing we need to do to modify E to change the distance. The sixth scale degree for a G major scale is E. The next interval is a whole step. Between E and F, this isn't true. We need to travel a whole step, but there is only a half step between E and F. F is directly next to E without any black key separating them, which means only a half step exists between E and F. To change this and make this a whole step interval between the two notes, we must move 2 half steps in total. We need to move 1 half step from E to F and move another half step away from F to the black key F sharp or G flat, totaling 2 half steps or 1 whole tone. This black key is our 7th scale degree of a G major scale. We've raised F by a half step to create a whole step interval from E. The result of this has made us land on a black piano key. The black piano key has 2 letter names, one with a sharp and the other with a flat accidental. So how do we know which one to use? If you haven't yet already seen my video on inharmonic equivalents and accidentals, I've linked it down below to check out on my channel. So let's recap on the rules of building major scales. Sharp and flat accidentals cannot mix in a single scale, and letter names cannot repeat. Letter names must also be in order. We are traveling a whole step from E. Since the letter names must be in order, the letter name for the next note must be called an F. Although F sharp and G flat technically sound the same, we have to call this note an F sharp. This also means any other black key that we land on, if any in the scale, must also be the letter name with the sharp accidental, since we cannot mix sharps and flats together in a single scale. In conclusion, a whole step away from E is F sharp, so F sharp is the 7th note of the scale. The next and last interval to complete our major scale is a half step. Between F sharp and the 8th scale degree, which we already know is G, there is a half step. The scale ends on the same note as our starting note and is 1 half step away from the 7th note. And we're done. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. We've created the G major scale. The G major scale only has 1 sharp accidental on the 7th scale degree, F. With the interval pattern for a major scale, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, you can create a major scale with any starting note of your choosing. To practice creating major scales, I would practice first by using all the white keys as different tonic notes until I feel comfortable with whole and half step distances on a piano. You can have a tonic note starting on notes with accidentals or black keys like A sharp, B flat, D sharp, E flat, and so on, but eventually you will run into other accidentals called double sharps and double flats. I'm also planning to do a video on the use of double sharps and double flats, particularly with making major scales, so stay tuned for that as well. For the 5 black keys, the preferred tonic notes to write major scales are D flat, E flat, G flat, A flat, and B flat, as opposed to C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp. With G flat and F sharp, they both do have the same amount of accidentals within their major scales. The only difference is that F uses sharps while G uses flats. I can't say which is more preferred, really, because I'm not exactly sure, but I do commonly see G flat being used more for a key signature. All right, guys, so there we have it. How to create major scales. I hope that this video was helpful and enjoyable. Check out my Instagram accounts, my website, and my Etsy shop where I sell some of my PDF digital downloads as artwork, study guides, or music reference sheets. I've linked everything down below in the description box for you to check out. Please leave me any comments, suggestions, hit the like and subscribe button, and look out for more music theory videos coming soon. Thank you so much, guys, and until the next video.